Good afternoon, Tony. Thanks for having me here, man.
Good afternoon, Daryl, and thank you for your time.
Hey.
I know you've been super busy lately with your Superman T-shirt on, but super busy. FireFly is certainly got wind in its sails, and it's certainly taking off all over the place. So let's hop into it.
Sure.
You know, what initially inspired you? Obviously, yourself and Courtney to start the FireFly initiative, and I guess what sets it apart. I'm not going to say similar because you guys are sitting in a space on your own, but what sets it apart from other opportunities in this space?
Well, yeah, good question and a good lead up. And look, it's what inspired us, to be perfectly honest, was our parents. You know, we grew up country kids. We grew up in sport. Both Courtney and I were fairly serious junior tennis players. He went on to a career in tennis and then coaching. I went on to a career in soccer. I stayed at grassroots level, so we were really always well involved in the community. And we moved into committees, and then you start to see some of the joy go out of the game because now it becomes a job and all that sorts of things. But more so, you know, look, Courtney's dad was a country fire authority brigade commander for 48 years as a volunteer. Like guys that would give up their weekend, would drop everything if there was a fire on, you know, would run into burning buildings to save lives and run into farms to save livestock and all that as a volunteer. You know, he didn't expect anything to do. It's just a good thing to do. My mum volunteered to be a cub leader for 3 years while we were in Cubs. And 28 years later, she was the district commissioner of Cubs for Victoria, you know, and they did it. They loved it. And it was one of those things. And you see the mutual respect that they gain in the community. So we always had this long running position of that, you know, volunteering is a good thing to do. You know, it's funny, Tone, because we have this volunteering, right? Back in our day, there was no such word as volunteering. You know, it was just it was you needed help and everyone turned up, right?
Yeah.
But now everything is titled, as we know. But so we looked at that, and then, you know, we had an issue, and COVID certainly brought it to the fore for us in relation to we'd had a project on. We'd had 900 coaches sign on to that platform that were going to be instrumental in a new technology that we're going to launch to them. And then COVID hit and shut all the tennis courts down in Victoria for 2 years, you know, and then it started to come out that clubs were like all clubs were about to go broke because no game day, no revenue. And then the other side of that was that the volunteers who had given their time freely and loyally to these clubs had nothing to do. So those mental health issues, you know, a lot of people use volunteering as a good place to catch up and have a chat and meet with your friends and your mates and do some good work. And now going like, what do I do with my spare time? Because I've got plenty. So there was that process about how do you make sure and obviously we had forecasts that we're going to come out of COVID, and then it's the rebuild and you know, but when you look at it, we have 5.9 million volunteers in Australia, and about 1 million of them over the last decade have decided not to volunteer. Well, if you run that gauntlet and you run that out over time with no other reason apart from that it's a good thing to do, eventually you get to a fully paid economy, and we can't support that. You know, volunteers represent about $1.3 trillion worth of economic good, and our governments and our corporates, we couldn't pay to replace them. So Courtney and I both started.
Sorry, why did they drop out? What was the reasoning behind that?
Oh, look, there lots of reasons. It's really hard to put a definitive on it, but it comes down to there was about a top 4 or 5. One that they just weren't appreciated. You know, at the end of the day, you go and do this and you go and do it, and they don't do it to be appreciated. But you know what it's like. Anything. If you're a little
bit of recognition is good.
Yeah, if you're tirelessly just doing it and doing it and doing it, and you don't even get thanked, and it's now becomes an expectation, and you know, so they get a bit despondent, you know, a bit sad about the fact that they, you know, I could do other things with my time, but I choose to do it for you. So yeah, so they weren't really acknowledged. You know, a pat on the back just doesn't cut it. They certainly weren't rewarded in any way, shape, or form. You know, like out of the volunteer organisations, and like there's 270,000 of them not-for-profit organisations in Australia.
Wow.
About 13% actually reimbursed volunteers for their expense, which leaves 87% that didn't reimburse volunteers. So there was an economic factor where volunteers just kept giving their time and their money, fuel costs to get from here to there. You know, like even if you take a little local soccer club, you know, where parents usually volunteer as a coach. You know, one, because they're looking after their kids, but two, because it's the right thing to do in those little communities. But then that's 3 hours on a Tuesday and 3 hours on a Thursday, and then 3 hours on a Sunday. You know what I mean? It's petrol money back and forward. It's all these things, and then it's membership to the club. So when you get to a point where the economic starts to hit, people go, you know what, really, I've got better things to do than be not appreciated for what I do. You know what I mean? Or abused even more so. You know what I mean? You know how many coaches get abused on the sideline by angry parents who think their kid's great and they're not. You know what I mean? So we looked at all that and went, two things. The volunteer community is huge. And what we found is that there's not a great deal of innovation. There's not a great deal of economic structures in it, because everyone's looked at it and went, how do you make money out of volunteering? Like, so software developers go, you know, these clubs got no money, but how do we get them to pay for our stuff? You know, and Courtney and I just looked at it and went, you know what? If we just flipped that and went, how do we make volunteers money instead of how do we make money from volunteering? And that really started to turn the cogs of the economy of social good, which is what we've created, to say, how do we benefit you? And in benefiting you, how does that benefit other members of the community?
Right.
You know, and then when you start to parallel them, you know, like I've done 12 years in local and international sponsorship, and the local club has no value proposition for a corporate sponsor these days. You know, the sign on the fence. You know, we were at Frankston, the Dolphins Footy Club in Frankston. Beautiful ground. They've got all the sponsors' signs up there. We're talking to the president with his back to the oval. And we said, can you name all your corporate sponsors that got signs up?
No chance.
He got 3.
Right.
Because they just become invisible after you've seen them the first time. But they keep trying to go, oh, you know, we've got a $10,000 sponsorship and you're going to get this and you're going to get, and the sponsors say, no, I'm not. And I don't have the money to donate 10,000 to your club this year and next year and the year after. So there's a real deficiency in there. So if you go, if we can link volunteers to sponsors rather than sponsors to clubs, then we can create a different level of the economy, which starts to circulate those funds and gives everyone a much better value proposition. So we built a 4-sided marketplace. The organisation, the volunteer, the small business, and the national brands and corporate sponsors, because they are all intertwined, and they all actually, one of the sector's problems is the other one's solution. Do you know what I mean? So we created it and we went, okay, what do we need to do first? One, we need to acknowledge and thank the volunteer. Yeah. So our platform has a kudos level. The more hours you do, the more acknowledgement you get. Then we wanted to reward the volunteer in forms of discounts and vouchers throughout our sponsorship network. Then we wanted to make sure that we had a platform there that could help fund the organisation, because, you know, most of the orgs now spend 60 to 80% of their time fundraising, not working on the cause.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, and we go, that's not, you didn't set up a charity, for example, to spend your whole life fundraising just to get enough money to run your charity. You set it up to have cause and effect. Here is the issue. We want to solve it. So we then want to create a platform that we can help fund the organisations. A couple of things that, like I said, that COVID broke through a lot. The World Economic Forum and the United Nations then deemed that we needed to have a better mandate in relation to corporate, environmental and social governance and how they're compliant with that, the standards of society. You know, it's easy to measure environmental impact, not so much as it is to measure mental impact or social impact on what the individual's doing. So they've come up with this mandate called ESG. We jumped on that. we were a bit cheeky because we called our program the Economy of Social Good, which actually is an acronym for ESG. And so we own it, and we own that space. Yeah. And that gives us the opportunity to go to corporates who want to help, who have a mandated responsibility to help, but just don't know really how to do it or who to give it to. So we create an aggregation process where all the organisations can share in that corporate money, so we can help fund them. And then third and fourth, the last one is with those corporate partners. You know, we had a conversation, and you know, and things get more socially buoyant. You know, there's lots of the younger generation that are socially responsible. They don't do anything; they just make a lot of noise. You know, but certainly on things like the NASDAQ and stuff like that, where these corporates want the young investor to be shareholders of their companies. And give you a classic example, that was the feedback we got. Like Nike, everyone knows Nike. The shares all trade on the stock exchange, and everyone wants to buy in. But these socially responsible younger generation go, no deal. You pay $1 to someone in a sweatshop to make a $360 pair of shoes, and you do nothing except hand out $10 million sponsorship checks to pro athletes. You know, what do you do at grassroots level? What do you do for the baseline of our society that says, I'm an 8-year-old kid that wants to play soccer and I'd really love to have a pair of Nike boots because they're great. Yeah. But you don't do anything for him. You hand out $40 million checks to you know, national impact players, right? Yeah. So they've now had to pull their head in. So one of the things that we do in relation to measuring what a volunteer does, because that's all social impact, we let then the corporates buy that social impact to go on their balance sheet and says we're now contributing financially to the betterment of society through the social impact play. So they've got environmental impact play and social impact play through us, and it's one of those things that's now starting to have some effect with how we're talking to and who we're talking to, and it makes sense. Yeah, you know, we're negotiating a deal now with a corporation that's going to do somewhere between 30 and 60 million in social impact credits. They have a mandate; they have to. They've got a responsibility to do that in the community, and they've seen FireFly as the best alternative to be able to delineate that investment, touch as many of the community organisations as possible, base that on what is the social impact that organisation's doing. You know what I mean? Because
how do you measure that? How does your platform measure that?
Oh, so every hour that a volunteer does, they just record it on the app. Right. And because it's time spent making a difference to the community, that's the social impact. You know, and it doesn't matter in which area of the not-for-profit sector. I could say that someone who goes and knocks on the door every day for the Red Nose Appeal, for example, is volunteering their time to collect funds for cancer research. Right. So they're the middle person, right? So every hour that they do that raises funds changes social impact in relation to cancer research. So we record that time and it becomes then a social impact hour. The volunteer gets to use that as a currency, and corporates get to buy that because the social impact, the value has already been committed. Right. It's already been done. Right. So give me an outline then of a typical volunteer, right? You made reference to Red Nose Day. So let's say I'm a volunteer, like what the onboarding process, right? Explain the onboarding process and then take me through as a volunteer. I'm recording my hours. Once I've started clocking up hours, I then, what reward and how do I get the reward? You know? Yeah, sure. So we have we've developed our app. It's a web-based app at the moment. We're about to push that live into the app world through iTunes and Play Store. But currently, our individual would just go to our website. They'd sign in, create an account, and from there they have a display wallet that shows them this is how many hours I've recorded. They can add an hour, and they click on that icon. It just takes them to another screen where they go, I did 4 hours. It was for a working bee. Submit, and that then records the hours and the functionality of that hour, So from an organisational point of view too, it's another bookkeeping method. So they go, well, we know how many hours our volunteers have done, and we know what they've been doing, volunteering their time. So that's one thing. And once they accrue that when I have as a volunteer, I have them in my wallet. I can then go to our marketplace. We create a marketplace for socially responsible sponsors that want to say, hey, two things. I want new customers. Volunteers are great customers because they spend. And two, I'm happy to give a better than market discount to say thank you for the time that you commit. And that becomes a social impact credit for that business as well. So the volunteer can then go to the marketplace, just like any other, like Wish or like what's that other one? Catch or Honey or whatever it is, and go, here is all the places that I can use my volunteer time as a currency, which is why there is no one else in the world doing it. So our socially responsible sponsors, like for example, Bunnings, will do a volunteer voucher that says get $50 off when you spend 200 at Bunnings. They can go to BP and for 600 hours they can redeem $250 worth of fuel. Just a straight swap. You don't have to spend anything. You just have to do the hours. So we created the economy.
And these are established. You've already established you've got a number of these organisations I can see on the website already established, part of FireFly.
Correct. Yeah.
Righto.
And now we're in the process on the local business part because they're all national. Really easy to identify brands. Hoyt Cinemas, Priceline Chemists, BCF. All the ones that everyone knows. The brand Kmart, Target, Coles, Woolies. All those. And now we're about to break that down to the next level, which is the local businesses, the fish and chip shop that's around the corner, who wants new customers and also wants to say thanks to the volunteers, to the tire shop, to the motor mechanic, to the electrician, to the hairdresser, all the local businesses that generally are the ones that every sporting organisation and every charity is banging on their door every day saying, hey, can you donate to us or could you sponsor us? They go, no, we'll sponsor everybody. Every volunteer will get a benefit by shopping with us because we want to say thank you to everyone. So it makes it really easy for them to manage as well. They don't have to worry about it. And we've created that platform to be anti-TikTok, anti-Facebook, anti-Instagram, which are all, put your money in your Click account for your online social media advertising, and whether that's 100 or 1,000 or whatever it is your budget, and you get clicked down to zero. Hopefully somewhere in there you pick up some business. Our model is advertise on the marketplace and we will only charge you an advertising fee once you have a customer.
Right.
Not a click, a customer, someone who's walked into your store and paid you cash. Our voucher is then acknowledged and we will send you a marketing invoice for that once you've got cash in the tin.
So Rotto, explain that. I mean, as a business owner, okay, so you're not coming to me and saying, listen, $2,500 to display your business.
No,
you're not doing any of that, right? So I sign up, no money down. You bring me customers. Every one of those customers, I'm then paying a small fee.
Yeah, so we have a across the board for every business a $2.50 advertising fee. That's per voucher. So your business, we would advertise you in the marketplace with your offer, and it might be, get $10 off a $30 spend at the fish and chip shop. So, and we do that.
It's free to advertise, like as the fish and chip.
Free. Yeah, just put your ad on.
Explain that, right? No cost.
No cost. No.
Right. Righto. So I get
that. Which was the other thing we wanted to do, right? So there's no cost to the volunteer, no cost to the organisation, and no cost to the small business owner, because they're the nucleus of our communities, right? It's without them. So the major brands, different story, right? We're quite happy to charge them because they've got the money. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they're buying into the ESG credit play, so they have the money to spend. But so the small business, and let's take your fish and chip shop. He says, yeah, look, my cost of goods is operate on about a 50% profit margin on a bad day. You know what I mean? So we go, okay, let's make your discount offer better than what I can get through any other advertising that you offer. You know, because there's plenty of places where you'll get Shopper Docket or Red Balloon or all these different places that will offer a discount on behalf of the vendor.
Right.
So we said, make sure your offer is as competitive, and we would like it to be better than that, because we're only sending you volunteers rather than general community. And nothing wrong with general community, but they're not contributing their time for the benefit of everybody else, right? They're just consumers. So advertise your product. So we would have a $10 discount off a $30 spend, for example. A volunteer downloads that voucher, which then accrues a $2.50 fee. But you don't pay the fee until after the voucher has been presented in your business and the cash has gone in the tin.
Righto. So, okay, so there's no downside whatsoever to the business owner. There's certainly only upside for the volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
But the business owner, I'm a volunteer, I walk in with the voucher, I just spent money, real hard cash in the fish and chip shop as an example.
Yeah.
Fish and chip shop has made money, they've generated revenues. How does then the fish and chip shop, how do you then, is this automated that then all of a sudden the fish and chip shop is debited $2.50?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So the fish and chip shop would say, okay, this is my offer. It's $10 cash off a $30 spend, and that's available any day. And to see how it goes, we'll put 10 of those vouchers in our marketplace. So they know that if all 10 are redeemed that month, it's a $25 advertising fee for $300 in revenue, because the volunteer has to spend 30 in store.
Wow. So it doesn't, like, let's say it's a $200 voucher.
Uh-huh.
They're offering, let's say it's a whatever discount similar to the fish and chip shop, but let's multiply it by 10. So when the volunteer redeems or goes in with that voucher, you're still only charging $2.50.
Correct.
Right. So
Once.
right. So it's.
I'll give you another example, right? One
Right.
of the businesses that joined the platform the other day, electrician, and he's doing a $75 discount off a $300 spend. So when you work that number out, like, that's a 25% discount off an electrician, which you can't buy anywhere. You know what I mean? And he's just done that on the basis that for the normal residential stuff that he does, the cost is normally somewhere between $250 and $300. That's his general service fee. So
even if it was an advertising cost to get that customer to walk through his door, right?
So, and he gives a $75 discount off a $300 spend. Our advertising fee for him is $2.50.
So he gets a customer, he's happy to give the discount, he's contributing to someone in the community that's actually doing good work.
Yep.
FireFly charges a standard $2.50 transaction fee, of which the electrician's paying that.
Correct.
Wow.
After he has a customer.
Right. After he gets the customer, and you can measure it, you can quantify it, you can see it. Well, mate, that is very impressive. So I suppose that's a good way to segue into, okay, the business model. You've started on that. Thank you. You've given us a brief, a reasonably good understanding of that. But now, okay, based on our conversation, you feel the best way for FireFly Initiative to really permeate out there in communities all over the world is to franchise the model, right?
Yeah. Look, we've had lots of conversations about the one thing that we don't want to do is impact further on going back to why are volunteers leaving. So we got to, they're not rewarded, they're not acknowledged. A lot of them are fatigued, they're tired.
Right.
We speak to a lot, especially in the sporting area, where you have some kids that play, you join the club, you might do bits and pieces of volunteering, then have an AGM, and now they need some committee people, and someone says, oh, Tony, you've got the experience in this and this, why don't you step up and jump on the committee? So you do, and then next year there's an AGM and the president's leaving and you've done an outstanding job, and they go, oh, Tony, you'd be a great president. And so you put your hand up and you go, okay, yeah, look, I'll give it a bash while the kids are playing. The kids stop playing, and you've done a great job, and now you can't get out of that position because everyone goes, no, we haven't got anyone else in the club that's as good a president as what Tony is. So we don't want you to step down. And you go, yeah, but I've got a life, what I've already done. And we've got presidents that are now advertising before the AGM because they've been 9 years in the seat.
Trying to find their own replacement.
Trying to find replacement, yeah. So they're tired. And now, worst of all,
that in itself is a contribution they're continually making, right?
Yeah. So then you get into the charity sector and the not-for-profit sector, and legislation is killing them. Administration is killing them, because at the end of the day, it's easy for the government to legislate. You've got blue cards, green cards, white cards, all these different qualifications and certifications you've got to have depending on what the organisation does. The other side of that is that money is scarce, so someone on that committee is perpetually writing government grants and applications for funding and all that sort of stuff. So they get burnt out by the administration level. Again, we go, you didn't sign on to be a bureaucrat. You signed on to cut oranges up at halftime and help the kids. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't sign on to have to write 42 government grants to get $5,000 out of somebody to help maintain your desire to find a cure for cancer. You know what I mean? Like, so part of that burden is what we want to shift as well. So the last thing we want to do is make our program cumbersome or another admin burden. Do you know what I mean? So on that basis, we get to a point where when the system runs, we didn't want volunteers to be burdened. So we looked at that and went, how do we continue to service 270,000 organisations? Like we've developed, we've got about 23 odd in the team now. But in relation to Courtney and myself, with the amount of work that we do, we can't possibly speak to 270,000 of them. We can't possibly speak to 5.9 million volunteers. So we thought, you know what, there is a really good, wholesome, value proposition to have some other people that want to be in the model and start to create their own income stream. And, franchise is a fantastic way to do that. And look, we still haven't ticked all the boxes about whether we will launch that way or not. But it seems to be a practical way in which that we can make sure that, because you've got things like, rural Australia is still big. It doesn't matter how you cut the mustard. You know what I mean? Trying to service volunteers in Sydney is not just a one-office operation. There's 4.5 million, 5 million people in Sydney, which by virtue of that puts about 1 million volunteers there in multiple organisations scattered all over the place. And Sydney's a nightmare. So instead of trying to have one nucleus that does all of Sydney, you go, let's put 5 franchises there that all have a serviceability. So we make sure that the org gets good representation, the volunteer gets good representation, and whoever buys in gets a really good way to make an income because you're just helping the community.
Right. Righto. So on that.
Yep.
Okay. So we spoke about community impact and social good, right? Yep. As a franchisee, with the franchise model, how will the franchisee, what have you got in place then for the franchisee to uphold the mission of fostering social good and community impact?
Yeah.
What initiatives will the franchisee be involved in?
Right. So there's two things. One is in each franchise area, there is a number of not-for-profit organisations. That might be 200, it might be 500, it might be 1,000. So number one priority is to go use the app, record your time, because there is a bigger position in this, and that's in relation to your organisational funding. Once you onboard that, then onboard your volunteers. So the franchise responsibility is to go and get the organisations in that local area to be using the program, and then their volunteers to use the program. And then the third step is to go to the local business community and say, hey, listen, we have X number of volunteers in the area. You've supported some clubs before, you've made donations, of this or that. Join our platform. Again, it's free to join, and you're only going to pay when you do it at the end. And create their own mini volunteer economies in that area. We've done the analysis that should see most of those regional spaces. And I talk regional as far as regional in geographic regions, not necessarily regional as in out west versus city. That then says it's a good stable environment once the ecosystem is running, where the franchise is going to get a percentage of the marketing fee from the small businesses, and they can grow that to every business in their local community. We did an evaluation of Stanthorpe, which is out west here in Queensland. 176 local businesses, and we did a street count. We went around and counted every business, and that's how many that town supports. Now they have 4,000 volunteers registered in Stanthorpe. So on that basis, 4,000 volunteers spending at any of those 172 businesses per week would create a franchise around about $200,000 a year income. The volunteer gets the value, the business gets the business, the environment and the organisations get to grow, and we get to expand the opportunity of being able to service every volunteer in Australia without becoming one of those things. Look, one of the things, and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, but Surf Life Saving Australia, one of the biggest fundraising organisations in Australia, has the worst deployment rate. They have a cost of goods of 86 cents of every dollar is admin. So we don't want FireFly to get to be another one of those organisations where it costs us so much money to run the organisation that very little actually goes downstream. On a franchise basis, it costs us nothing to run the organisation. We support the franchise runs their local area, and everyone is far more profitable, prosperous, and enjoys life because the representation is far better. Yeah,
mega. So you mentioned Australia is big, but then the world's a lot bigger. Obviously,
the world is a big place.
So, and based on conversations I'm having with people, I don't think you'll find it too hard to find franchisees out there. But one thing that I think is worth covering is the selection criteria for a franchisee. Right. Yep. So have you thought about the criteria or qualification will a potential franchisee need to meet, and how will FireFly ensure they align with your vision, your values, and your mission?
So two things will happen. Number one, and unlike other franchises, which is really hard to manage and mandate, they have acquisition of property, setup fees, establishment fees. Like if I want to go and buy a Macca's store, it's a $6 million setup.
Yeah.
So that makes it very hard for the master franchise, which would be us, to indicate what that Macca's store is doing or not doing. So when we look at our model, basically there is zero setup costs. It's create an account, and here's your territory, and off you go. Right. So we would have we have the opportunity to set some mandates. If you have a penetration point of, let's say, 2,000 organisations in your area, and over the first 12 months you bring on 10, number one, you're not making any money as a franchisee, and two, you're not on board with the program because we would anticipate, X KPI. Yeah. So number one is they have to be a volunteer.
Yeah.
Or have volunteered. And they have to be passionate about helping people. And we have a model that's now been proven. Like the results have been ridiculous because it's we believe that our model's pretty good. We launched in February, and the uptake has been ridiculous. So the market says our model's pretty good. And, like last month we had 117 redemptions. So that's 117 times volunteers have gone onto the marketplace and gone, I've got enough hours to get this now.
Yeah.
So that starts to then speak to the rest of the volunteers. Yeah. How do you get that? Easy. Join here and off you go. And it's a no-brainer, So on that basis, look, have we defined what that is? No, not really, but we have. mentally,
yeah,
holistically.
You've conceptualized, but again, it's
if they're not keen to our methodology, if they're not keen to our ethic,
they're not aligned. Yeah,
if they're not aligned, then it doesn't matter how much money you want to chuck at us.
Yeah. So ideally, someone within a community, like a community leader, it might be a business owner, it might be a leader of the number one sporting team in the area, or whatever it might be. It might. So ideally, very suited. How would you profile the person?
Look, ideally, Tony, we would be looking for parents of entrepreneurial kids that are already difference makers, and saying, I'm going to buy you this franchise and the opportunity that you get to grow in the community and serve the community and make some money. We had the fortune of being on the invited to be on the Gold Coast City Council Volunteer Summit Committee, so we can help steer the activities of and met 123 young student volunteers that are all epic kids. They're just crazy. What they want to do for the community, what they want to do for society. They're the sort of kids that you'd go, and we may do that. We may have the Youth Volunteer of the Year award where we give them a franchise. You know what I mean? And just go, here. That's because of the outstanding contribution you already made.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be the ideal for us. But if it's not, it's someone who is who has a heart and a motivation to help people who are doing good. End of the day, that's as complicated as it is. If you want to buy a franchise for your own selfish purposes and just to make a whole heap of money, that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's why you buy a business, right? But the overarching position has to be that if you're not here to help us elevate volunteers, then you're probably not here with us anyway.
You're not aligned, with your vision, values, and mission. Yeah. Okay. So what about support? So obviously you're planning support and resources for the franchisee. So what about training, ongoing assistance, and operational guidance?
Yeah, well, thanks to the technology that we have deployed. So we have every component of the business already has a training video, and you can access that online. As co-founder, and look, Courtney and I both made the mission to use the Airbnb model, and that is that the founders of Airbnb went out and took photos of every spare room that they could find to help launch their model. We've done the same thing, and still now, people are surprised on our online chat that they get me. They go, oh, what? Aren't you too busy to be responding to chats? I go, no, it's our business. Do you know what I mean? So
you want to know. Yeah, you're on the front line. Yeah.
So we have even like tomorrow we have we're going to stand up with all the volunteers to bring them up to date. So monthly newsletters, monthly webinars, information sessions, Q&A sessions, and at the end of the day, direct exposure to. Courtney and I aren't hiding behind the rest of the team. If you want to talk to me, there's my mobile number. Give me a ring. I may not have time to talk to you when you want, but we'll have the conversation. So yes, everything's done relative to the normal. Look, and the thing about it too is that we get to a point where the franchise structure is mandated now when it has to file a form of compliance. And ours will be no different. It will have all the ticks and crosses that needs to be there to help support the franchise.
Yeah, cool. So okay, so innovative technologies. You mentioned before you're building the app. When do you think the app will be ready on the App Store and Play Store?
To be conservative, if we could launch in January, to kick the new year off.
Practically ready to go.
We're about 80% front end tested and validated, and it looks really good and has a functionality that we like stealing stuff from other people, only the good stuff. So we took the same approach that Steve Jobs did, and he said he doesn't want any user of an Apple device to be more than 3 clicks away from their destination. So we wanted the same thing. So we've been working really hard to go log hour,
simple, spend. Easy.
Log hour. This is the function, and now I can go spend. I want to invite a new volunteer invite that, enter email, send.
Yeah.
So we've worked really hard at the front end of our app to make it as frictionless as possible, as simple as possible, obviously as free as possible, and it's free for volunteers and for orgs. So yeah, look, we're really happy that how that's coming along. We now have to integrate that with the back end tech to make sure that you can log your hours and then go and spend.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if we can, that'll be massive in relation to next year's forecast if we can get that launched
In January.
in the commercial, app store and
Beauty.
and Play Store.
So okay, for the franchisee, like you mentioned, video, you've got video pretty much covering every aspect of the business. So where will they access all that? Is that on the website, or will that be in the app?
Yeah. And the website will have the characteristic that if we go that way, each franchise will have a sign in. They'll have their own portal.
Yeah.
So that will give them the maintenance of that.
Yeah.
And obviously the rest of the fundamental training processes that either Courtney and I will do myself, or the rest of the team will help facilitate. We use some pretty savvy back end tech platforms to help manage, EDMs and campaigns and updates and all that sort of stuff. So we spend a lot of time making sure that our processes are workflow automated, because again, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to get to a point where we're like Surf Life Saving Australia, where we have 30,000 staff that we have to cover to run the platform. We want the platform to run as effectively as possible with the least amount of admin, because if we can do it, then the club can do it.
Yeah, got it. All right, again, to support the franchisees, obviously, your marketing strategy, I can see on the website you've got some really innovative content up there.
Yep.
So, but when it comes to the brand's image, the FireFly's initiative's image, so how will you maintain that across different franchisees? So the franchisee will be given, like if he's in or she's in their local community and they're wanting to promote FireFly, you're providing them with all
the assets, everything.
Right, all the assets. So they'll have video, they'll have.
So that would be FireFly Initiative
brochures, logos, everything.
FireFly Initiative cans, FireFly Initiative Bendigo, FireFly Initiative Wagga. You know what I mean? So FireFly Initiative Thailand, FireFly Initiative, Arkansas, FireFly Initiative London. And that's part of the reason that we picked FireFly. Just for, I don't know if we shared this before, but for your record, FireFly is one of God's magnificent creations that it's the only thing on the planet that can create its own light. It has its own luminosity, which is just a mind blow for a start, right? I mean, how does this thing light up? I mean, it creates electricity and all that sort of stuff. The interesting thing for us is that a FireFly by itself will glow at whatever looms. The more FireFlies that there are, the more the luminosity. So when you put more and more FireFlies together, their light gets brighter and brighter because of this concentric energy that they generate for themselves. So we picked the FireFly because we believe that volunteers light up the community. Without them, the community would be a dark, dark place.
Yeah, great name.
The more volunteers you get together, the brighter the community becomes. So on that basis, it's really important for us to make sure that we keep that brand consistency. So we finish up having FireFlies all over Australia that lights up Australia, and we become, like we've done so many times with so many different initiatives, that Australia leads the way. And in the volunteering space, we don't. The fact that there's 5.9 million volunteers here and 69 million in America, it isn't just a reason to jump across the Pacific and go, let's do that because that's where the game's at. We want Australia to be proud of the fact that we are the best volunteering country in the world. And lead the way for the rest of them. So it's how easy it is.
Cool. Now that's awesome. Even though I think most of the franchisees will be signing up because of the social good and so forth, but obviously the franchise model is a business model. I think we really need to cover the revenue and profitability expectations. So the question is, what sort of financial expectations can a potential franchisee, expect, or what would be the anticipated profitability within the model for a franchisee?
Right.
Now, obviously, location is going to be a major contributing factor. Like somewhere like Sydney should be more profitable in one sense than somewhere like, you know, Cairns, as an example, right? The location, more people. So, you know, how, you know, I mean, cover that, obviously.
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that was a little difficult in the overall structure of that is consistency of territory, number one.
Yeah.
So we looked at that. We have 527 council regions in Australia, and each of those council regions service a community. And so we did an alignment to make sure that the following happen. That one, there is a consistent amount of opportunity for engagement with not-for-profit organisation, grassroots sports and charities, number one. Number two, that the population supports that. So, e.g., a franchise territory might be in a population, whether that's really tightly geographically bound or loosely, of at least 50,000 potential in population. Because from that, we know, based on statistics, that out of 50,000, we finish up with around about 12 to 15,000 volunteers in that population. Right. So you got to make sure that the club and organisation supports the volunteer, and then we looked at the overlay of how many small businesses, and realistically, in every region, we would like one small business for every 10 volunteers. That creates an opportunity, because we looked at it and went, you know what, if we could get businesses that satisfied every volunteer's general weekly spend, you know, things like petrol and insurances and food and takeaway and entertainment and all those things that we would spend normally on during the week.
Yeah.
And if we can get all our sponsors, you know, at a 25 to 30% discount, and we can get our volunteers to make all their general spend through the marketplace, the volunteer is going to save about 30% of their income for a start, which is a good thing.
Yeah. But
it also means, from a franchise perspective, like I said, if you've got 5,000 volunteers on platform that are spending once a week, the revenue are split on the $2.50 advertising fee.
It's enormous.
Would be a 250 grand a year income for a franchise.
That's mega.
Yeah, yeah. Look,
how much, you know, like, to achieve that? So run through the numbers again. How many businesses? Like, obviously 1 per 10 volunteers. But to achieve those numbers, you mean 5,000 divided by 10, you probably need what, 500? Am I right in saying that? Or give me the number.
Yeah, look, it's a bit early and preemptive, because you have some retailers that have a huge appetite for loyalty spend like this. Yeah. Like your fish and chip shop guy, right? He goes, look, I don't really want a volunteer to come in on a Friday or a Saturday night, because I'm already chockers and flat out then.
Yeah.
But the rest of the week, you know, if I could get another 30 customers in on that basis. So when you go back to the marketplace, you go, okay, so I need 30 customers on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and a Thursday for the fish and chip shop. Out of 10,000 people, we go, yeah, well, we do that once a fortnight, easy. Especially if I'm getting 30% discount. You know what I mean? So from the small business sector, you got to marry the one-off spend that a volunteer might spend once with this business for the year.
Yeah.
You know, like we've got a young guy here who does pool cleaning and chemicals. Well, realistically, he's going to do a lot more chemicals in the summer month, because we're using it, versus pool cleans in the winter. You know what I mean? So if he can get everybody in his local area that's buying their chemicals over winter through him, then guess what? They're going to continue to buy their chemicals over summer through him.
100%.
So that would become a.
He's got a customer. Yeah, he's got to service that customer.
Yeah. So look, it's really hard to say what the frequency is going to be.
Yeah.
Subway, for example, if you've got 5,000 volunteers in your area, Subway could do 5,000 in 1 week.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And on that basis, that's a $12,500 revenue line just from Subway in 1 week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then if you went, okay, let's average that out, and you get 50 customers from Subway, every week, and then you get 200 customers for Subway every fortnight, and then 1,000 customers once every 3 weeks, and then 5,000 customers once a month. Aggregate that back, and you're still talking about $1,800 a month in revenue just from Subway.
Yeah. Yeah, it's mega.
Yeah.
Righto. So let's talk a little bit about growth plans and territory allocation. Righto. So how do you provide? I mean, could you provide insights into the intended growth plans for FireFly franchisees or franchises? And I suppose, anyone out there that is in Sydney, I mean, Sydney's a fairly big place. How will territories be allocated, and what's, your timeline? Let's say you've got someone in Sydney. Do they get all of Sydney until they can't handle it, and then you allocate another franchise there? No. How does territory allocation?
Again, it comes back to 2 qualifying criteria, or 3. It comes back to how many. So if we look at it, and how many organisations in the not-for-profit space, which are volunteer driven, are there in Sydney? And let's say there's 40,000 of them. Then it comes down to the allocation of how many people do you need to service 40,000 of them. You know what I mean? And that might be that each region can handle 100 organisations.
Right.
That's 2 organisations a week for the year. You know what I mean? From a servicing point of view. Yep. So it's a bit of work, but it's not too hard.
Yeah.
Because you've got to take into account that a lot of the organisations have said to us in the past, can you come to the committee meeting and show the rest of the committee what you do? So on that basis, you get to that point where there's only so many committee meetings I can get to a year. Yeah. So first of all, it goes down to how many is serviceable in the area. And let's say that I can maintain 200 in my portfolio. You might get 300 in your particular area versus my 200, because your volunteer population out of 300 is 5,000, whereas my volunteer population out of 200 is 5,000. So we try and get to the same equitable number of volunteers that are committing to the org, more so than how many organisations are there. Because I could give you, out of the 67,000 charities, I could probably give you a region that says, okay, I'll give you Australia, Tone, and you get 6,700 charities in that, so 10% of the whole charity base. However, there are only 3 volunteer member charities. So your volume then says, okay, I've got 6,000 organisations, but my max is 18,000 volunteers. Whereas if I go to a footy club, one footy club, I've got 224 volunteers, and then I've got members that can volunteer as well. So it's the balance of trying to work out on a national basis where those crossover points come. Hey, buddy.
Hey. There's a volunteer there, right there.
Yes, he's volunteering. So we've done a high degree analysis on every postcode in Australia. What's the population density? What's the serviceability? And so you might find, I'll give you a place like Benalla in Victoria, right, where it's a smaller population, 22,000. So your territory might be now a little bigger. It might be Benalla, Euroa, Wangaratta, Albury. So from that perspective, okay, well, boo-hoo, I've got a little driving to do. You know what I mean? Your numbers of viability. Hey, go see Grandma, please. Go.
Sign him up. Young volunteer.
Come on. Grandpa's got 3 minutes.
Yeah. Almost done.
Yeah.
All right. No, that's good. That's good. I get that. So territory allocation, we've covered that. Rightio. I suppose just to finish off, I guess anyone out there really wants to understand the legalities behind becoming a franchisee, I suppose the legal and compliance support. So what are the frameworks that you're establishing to ensure the franchisee operate within the guidelines and within the regulation?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, just in relation to now, franchise law changed, a few years back, where people were trying to set up franchises, but doing them under a licensing environment, and as it got wind of that, so there was no legal recourse for the franchise because they weren't really a franchise, even though they thought they were buying one. So look, we've just got the legal teams that are starting to go through the compliance issues that we have relative to normal ASIC compliance and ATO compliance and the ACCC compliance of being able to launch and receive funds for payment for a franchise. It's fairly rock solid now in relation to the constitutional legislation of what a franchise can and can't do, what a master franchise can and can't charge for, all of that sort of thing. So it's like everything else. We've spent probably more time and consideration on making sure that all our structures are legal and compliant. When we get into a position where we launch franchises, it will be no different. They'll all be 100% compliant with every code that's required.
Yeah, got it. Cool. All right. Well, that's great, Daryl. That sort of wraps it up around that. But I think FireFly Initiative is certainly an amazing concept. Hats off to you and Courtney, the work you've done to get it to where it is. I mean, it's brilliant. I think FireFly Initiative around the globe, it's something that really does make a lot of sense, whether you're a volunteer or, a business, whatever, in any location, anywhere in the world. I mean, we need more volunteers out there, and we certainly need the support that FireFly can bring to those volunteers, which makes it, as you were saying, I mean, if you're out there volunteering, there's nothing wrong with the recognition and, this financial support. I think it's
yeah.
But to end it off, Daryl, I mean, awesome stuff. I mean, how do people contact you? Maybe over email to begin with.
Yeah. Well, visit our website, which is fireflyinitiative.xyz.
Yep.
My personal email is daryl@fireflyinitiative.xyz. Courtney's is Courtney at fireflyinitiative.xyz. You can link in, contact us on our email. Send us a message. Go on to our online chat. As I already mentioned, most of the time that gets to me. We have another team that manages it when I'm not available, so it still gets handled. But I like to talk to people, so I try and get to them. Or people can reach out to you, Tony, and you can flick an intro.
No problem. Absolutely. All right. So whether you're a volunteer, whether you're a potential franchisee, okay, let's start having those conversations. But Daryl, thank you for your time. That was fantastic. Thank you.
No worries, Fuzzy. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Good job, man.
Stop recording.
Stop recording. That was